The Kansas City Chiefs traveled to Las Vegas and fell the Raiders by the score of 27-20. We've got headlines, big ideas, talking points, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, game ball, and finally a Mahomes monologue that I think is worth sticking around for because there are some observations that I took from some stat lines this week that basically just I was able to weave something that I was not expecting to be able to weave. Now, headlines, as far as headlines are concerned, I believe there is just one for this game. Handled. Big ideas. Well, guys, because it's the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs, we're going to return to the battlefield. We're going to return to the land of the dead. We're going to return to the casualties. Sunday's casualties were Najee Johnson with a concussion and Jody Fortson to a knee injury that I have to imagine ends Jody Fortson's season. I have no confirmation on that. It's just basically what it looks like to me. The second big idea here, the Kansas City Chiefs are 7-0. They have a 2-game lead on wins and a 3-game lead on losses within the division. Or is it the other way around? I can't remember. The Bengals and the Ravens lost to the Eagles and the Browns, respectively. The Colts lost too, but it was to the Texans. The Jets, Dolphins, and Jaguars all lost. The playoff picture right now, to me, looks like the Bills, Broncos, Steelers, Ravens, and Texans are contenders. The Broncos I'm not sold on, but they do have a decent record, 5-3. Yeah, so it's 3 games, 2 games on wins, 3 games on losses. Because of the bye week, the math gets a little bit shady in there. Not a stunning field as far as the AFC is concerned. Certainly, the Kansas City Chiefs, with just a couple more wins, put themselves in position to be the number 1 seed. I mean, you've got a couple teams now with 5 wins across the AFC, but the Kansas City Chiefs are sitting pretty at 7-0. Now, moving on from that for these Kansas City Chiefs, I know that it didn't feel like a dominant victory. I know that it felt very frustrating indeed at certain times. There was a moment in was it the second quarter or the third quarter where the Raiders had the chance to take the lead, but never did they. The Raiders led in this game for about 8 minutes of game time. That's it. Yes, it was a 7-point victory, but for all intents and purposes, it was a 14-point victory because for some reason, teams have zero clock awareness. I don't know if you've noticed this too the past few weeks. Teams have zero clock awareness. Actually, it's been this whole season because the Ravens opened the year up not particularly looking to speed things up at the end of the game. The teams have zero clock awareness when playing the Chiefs. It's almost as if they are resigned to losing, and in exchange for not trying to win, Andy lets them score a final touchdown in order to make things look better on paper. But at no moment were these Chiefs really in trouble. There was about 8 minutes of game time, like I said, where the Kansas City Chiefs were behind, but it was not an insurmountable lead, obviously. It was a single possession ball game at that time. The Chiefs regained the lead and never looked back. It's been wild this year. The defense is playing lights out. The offense seems to be struggling, but we'll get to a point on that in a moment. This team, however, seems simply dominant. They don't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way watching this team. But when you sit down and you look at the numbers, guys, it really does look that way. It really does look that way. The defense misses Jaylen Watson, and the defense will miss Jaylen Watson. Now, it does not have to be manifested in the plays given up by Najee Johnson, if he's going to be on the field moving forward, or in the plays given up by Joshua Williams, who we kind of have to presume will be on the field going forward, at least next week probably. I imagine that Najee Johnson is going to miss at least 1 week with concussion protocol. But there can be a general leakiness in the defense writ large. That is kind of what we saw on Sunday. Now, that can get shored up. Somebody can step up. And it doesn't even have to be in the passing game that these things sort of manifest. If a running back were to get out there, Jaylen Watson's good against the run. Jaylen Watson is good in the zone with the flats. Jaylen Watson is a solid cornerback all around. Missing that guy is going to screw things up a little bit. I don't know why Joshua Williams suddenly regressed. You can go all the way back to his rookie season, and yes, Jaylen Watson started the second game, I believe, of his rookie season. No, he started the first game too, I think, because there was an injury with Trent McDuffie. Anyway, the second game of the rookie season, I believe, was against the Chargers, and that was when he had the pick six to win it. That might have been week 1. I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but Jaylen Watson never really looked back since then. The coaching staff has seemingly tried all the while to get Joshua Williams to take the reins of the number 2 cornerback spot from Jaylen Watson. It just never worked out. Now, an interesting thing to observe, there have been weeks along the way. There have been portions of seasons along the way. There may even be a year here or there that Joshua Williams has outsnapped Jaylen Watson, played more football than Jaylen Watson, played more defense than Jaylen Watson. I don't know where this sudden regression with Joshua Williams happened. Here's the troubling part. I like Jaylen Watson. I've liked Jaylen Watson since the day he was drafted. I had a thumbnail on a video for that draft pick called Super Sleeper. Had to delete it because YouTube doesn't like anything. But he's injury prone. He cannot stay healthy. Do you re-sign him? Do you let him walk at the conclusion of this season? That is going to be, in my opinion, a very big question. Now, the defense, Alexander Mattison had 14 carries for 15 yards. That is all. The Raiders had 33 total rushing yards. That is all. Here's an interesting note on the offense. The offense scored 27 points. The Chiefs have scored 173 points on the season. They have averaged 24.7 points per game. Last year, through 7 games, they had scored 178 points. How do you feel about that 5-point difference through 7 games? They have averaged last season 25.4 points per game. But that includes the 41-point explosion from the Kansas City Chiefs against the Chicago Bears, a team that was at that point completely reeling, though they were 0-3, I believe, after the Chiefs game, but maybe it was 0-4 after the Chiefs game. I don't remember the week of the year, but they ended up going 7-10 on the season. So they found their footing eventually, but at the point in the season where the Chiefs played them, they were absolutely on their heels, and the Chiefs had a 41-point explosion against them. I'm going to go ahead and jump to point number 9 because this needs to be talked to in tandem. Hold on to your butts. Traditionally, this is the point in the season where things go a little bit off the rails. And by traditionally, I mean so long as Patrick Mahomes has been the starting quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. They get to a good record, 5, 6, 7 games into the season. Maybe they've lost one, maybe they've lost two, but things are going all right. And then all of a sudden, you have a 9 to 31 point loss to the Titans. You have a ridiculous loss to the Colts. You have something like that, and all of a sudden, the team does not get back on the horse. All of a sudden, they have a stretch where they're 3-3. They have a stretch where they're 3-4. They have a stretch where they're 4-7. They have one of these strange type stretches in the middle of the season. And by so long as Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean so long as Andy Reid has been the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, except for that first season, what happens is they have a good start, a rocky middle, and then they end the season strong. So hold on to your butts, because there's going to be some weird and wild stuff coming up for the Kansas City Chiefs in this season over these next few weeks. Back to talking point number 8, and that is actually something I should have changed. What I meant to, Patrick Mahomes reached 30,000 yards passing. I will say that here. We've got a talking point for Patrick Mahomes in just a moment here, but that is a big deal, and we will get back to that in the Mahomes monologue. Talking points for this game. DeAndre Hopkins only had 2 receptions. That's true. But I think, really, in order to get a justification for that, what we have to do is look at when those receptions occurred. He had, I believe, 3 targets. I don't remember where the missed target was. However, his first reception came on a 3rd down. You have to move the chains. Find DeAndre Hopkins. His second reception came in that 2-minute drill. Towards the end of the half, the Kansas City Chiefs were driving in order to add points before halftime. His second reception came then. These are high leverage moments in the football game. This is what I think you were looking for with DeAndre Hopkins being on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs this week. He's going to have to earn trust with Patrick Mahomes. He earned trust with a 3rd down conversion, and by keeping a scoring opportunity alive in a 2-minute drill. He's going to have Mahomes' trust now. Mahomes is going to take more care in the huddle to make sure DeAndre Hopkins knows what's going on, and DeAndre Hopkins, the consummate professional that he is, will learn the playbook. He did not have the opportunity to learn the playbook this week. Basically, you were telling DeAndre Hopkins to go out there and win. Still had 2 receptions. Still had 2 receptions in very high leverage moments. And I think that is all you need to see to know that his role with these Kansas City Chiefs is in fact going to grow. I also saw something from Xavier Worthy that I thought was promising. I don't think I have noticed this before. Perhaps I am wrong and it has happened. I know it's happened at least a couple times. I've never noticed the emphasis on it that we saw this game. Xavier Worthy was isolated on rub routes towards the sideline several times. Once he had a drop for sure. Once he had his touchdown. Once, I believe, was one of his other receptions. And then I think he got open but was not targeted on another. So he's lining up basically in the slot. There's a wide receiver outside of him. The wide receiver crosses in front of him in order to rub or pick the defender. What this is it is a ploy not only to get Xavier Worthy open, but also to use his speed. Now, to address the observation, I guess I should say, that Xavier Worthy is seemingly dropping the football an awful lot. It looks like that's true to me. However, I don't think that is necessarily as worrisome as it would otherwise tend to hit us. I don't think it's as bad as other drops that we've seen in the past. Number one, he's moving a whole lot faster than a lot of the guys that have been dropping passes. Number two, he is a rookie. He is in his 7th game. He's going to work these things out. He's never caught the ball from Patrick Mahomes. He's never caught the ball with a cornerback that weighs 207 pounds and is almost as fast as him, trailing right behind him. These things will get worked out. In addition, some of the drops that we've seen downfield, guys, that's just the low percentage opportunity that is a downfield pass. So these crossing routes that he's dropping, that's more problematic. The fact that he sometimes seems to, I don't even think he turns before he catches the ball. The weird thing is he might be such a twitched up athlete that he is reacting to the drop before he's reacting to turning upfield to make a play. I don't know if that even makes sense, but you see the ball slap off of his hands and all of a sudden he's got his head down. He knows this is happening. I don't think this is going to be a part of his game. I think that he is the type of guy that is going to learn how to really deal with catching the football at the NFL level, catching the football, running as fast as he can. This isn't college where you can catch the football and then accelerate. You've got to catch while accelerating. So these things I think are going to get worked out during the course probably of his rookie season. Here's the thing. Would you rather have Marquez Valdes-Scantling? I have not looked at this. I am assuming that we're going to see something here. Xavier Worthy stats on the season. Right now, 19 receptions, 235 yards. 19 receptions, 235 yards, 3 touchdowns for Xavier Worthy. When you think back to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you were thinking last season where he had 21 receptions, 315 yards, 1 touchdown. So he had a much better average than Xavier Worthy, but on the entirety of the season, Marquez Valdes-Scantling caught 2 more passes. On the entirety of the season, Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 80 more receiving yards. 2 fewer touchdowns. The entirety of the season. And if you want to be fair to Xavier Worthy, you have to give him credit for his scrimmage yards, which are 282. So he is actually about 53 yards shy of the entirety of Marquez Valdes-Scantling's 2023 season. That is pitiful. Not for Xavier Worthy, but for Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That's why he's no longer a Kansas City Chief. Despite the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs had the opportunity to reclaim him, and the one time they have chosen not to do that this season was on Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, Patrick Mahomes, in my eyes, was the best he's looked all season. He was making decisions. He was hitting his drop and going. He was not overthinking. He was not underthinking. He was not scrambling all that much out of necessity, as we've seen him do sometimes this year. He was not throwing things flagrantly into linebackers somehow. Had a pretty good game. One bad pass tipped at the line of scrimmage that almost was really, really bad because of the area on the field in which it happened. Didn't matter. Did not matter. Gardner Minshew. This has to be said because I think we're overreacting. Gardner Minshew's not bad. Gardner Minshew has games like this all the time. Gardner Minshew has games like this plus 30% once in a while. Gardner Minshew is not where Gardner Minshew is in terms of how many teams he's been on, where he started and not started, how many times he's been moved up and down a depth chart. He's not where he is because of skill or talent. He's simply where he is because of consistency. That's what makes Gardner Minshew the Gardner Minshew that we see. Baker Mayfield, much the same way in his career. Consistency is what is biting these guys in the back end. So, I don't think we need to overreact to the fact that he had a decent game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Raiders ended up sticking it out 27-20 with these Kansas City Chiefs. On the touchdown that Roland Wallace gave up, Christian Roland Wallace gave up, I believe it was that final touchdown. Guys, that was good coverage. From what I can tell, maybe the camera angle is funny, maybe I'm not looking at something. That looked like good coverage. It was just a guy reached out, made the catch at the extent of his reach. It was a good ball from Minshew, is what it is. Now, another narrative that I think is probably prevalent through Chiefs fans right now, sacks, or the offensive line. And maybe in tandem with the defensive line. The defense got 5 sacks. The offense gave up 1 sack. Some of this is because of Patrick Mahomes' mobility. Some of this is because Patrick Mahomes was decisive in this game. Not all of it. You're still looking at Max Crosby. You're still looking at a guy who can get to the quarterback regardless of who he's lined up against. They gave up 1 sack. You're still looking at a defense that's good and absolutely wanted to smother this Chiefs offense. They wanted nothing more. This was all they have this season. Got to Mahomes once. That's not bad. The offensive line can look rickety. They can bend but not break. The offensive line doesn't have to be pretty. They're effective enough. The offensive MVP, in my opinion, Travis Kelce, 10 receptions, 90 yards, 1 touchdown. It was hard not to put Mahomes in here for this, but give it to the old man. The old man showed up against the Raiders and took home a victory. 9-yard average, that is true possession receiver stuff, with a touchdown. I'm not sure what we are looking at with Travis Kelce this season. I am not sure if he is over the hill in his NFL career. But, man, he's still got a couple in him. The defensive MVP, look, there may not have been a star in this game, but unlike the last couple of weeks where everyone did a solid job, this week there were tons of players that did good jobs. The linebackers, Nick Bolton had 9 tackles. Drew Tranquil, 6 tackles, 1 sack. Leo Lionheart Chanel, 4 tackles, 1 sack, on I believe 28 snaps, something like that. On the D-line, Turk Wharton had 2 tackles and a sack. Carl Loftus had 2 tackles and a sack. I think it was 3 tackles and a sack. I think I mistyped that. But only one of them was a solo. And then Mike Pennell had a tackle and a sack. There were lots of good performances all around. The game ball, in my opinion, has to go to DeAndre Hopkins. This team is reeling with injuries. DeAndre Hopkins could have come in and not executed. DeAndre Hopkins could have come in and been absolutely terrible. DeAndre Hopkins could have come in and contributed nothing. And maybe he contributed next to nothing. 2 receptions. But they were incredibly necessary receptions, and it's going to be something that he can build on into the future. So, down to the Mahomes monologue. Patrick Mahomes passed the 30,000-yard milestone on Sunday. Of course, he was the fastest quarterback ever to reach the mark, needing only 103 games, passing Matthew Stafford's record. Stafford took 109. 6 games different. If you're thinking that's a little snug, it's a little closer than you remember Patrick Mahomes eclipsing these records in the past, you're right. Mahomes threw for 25,000 yards in 90 games, or Stafford threw for 25,000 yards in 90 games. It took Mahomes just 83. That's a 1-game gap closing. between the two. But the 20,000-yard milestone, one that Mahomes also owns, was accomplished in 67 games, a snug victory over the 71 enjoyed by Stafford. Now, I don't tell you this simply to flout Mr. Stafford, himself a borderline Hall of Famer at this point. I say it because Stafford is about 2,300 yards away from throwing for 60,000 yards. After 16 seasons in the league and 213 games. With a record of 101, 111, and 1. Yes, Mahomes is the king of the mountain with statistics. By the way, if he throws for 31 touchdowns this season, he'll hit the 250 mark. But Mahomes has also gotten himself a record of 81 and 22. 81 wins, 22 losses. Stafford would not reach his 81st win until 2021. His 13th season in the league, he was 33 years old. Matthew Stafford, right now, 36 years old, has a playoff record of 4-4. He has one more playoff loss than does Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes has nearly 4 times as many wins with 15. Patrick Mahomes 15-3 in the playoffs. Again, I'm not saying this to disparage Matthew Stafford. I'm a Matthew Stafford fan. I say this because there are stat guys, Dan Marino, Matthew Stafford, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees. There are wins guys who won a lot but maybe don't have all the passing stats. Terry Bradshaw, Eli Manning, John Elway, Troy Aikman. Those are guys who won, but maybe weren't all that compelling with their statistics. But there are very few stats and wins guys. Maybe just 3. Tom Brady, Joe Montana, and Patrick Mahomes. That's all I have for this episode. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And I hope to have you back for the next one.